There are growing concerns over the continued dysfunction of the National Gender-Based Violence Helpline. This is for survivors. A number of anti-GBV organizations say this makes thousands of people helpless and vulnerable, especially at this time of the year. To get a sense of the actual impact of this, I'm joined by Advocate Tarisai Mchuchu-MacMillan, and she is the Executive Director at Mosaic, one of the anti-GBV organizations worried about the cutting off of this helpline. Advocate, good evening to you, and thank you for your time. Let's start with when it is that you learned about this helpline being cut off, and what are the reasons, or what is the explanation from those that are running it?
Well, sadly, we actually discovered that the helpline is completely down when we were testing it during 16 days of activism while we were preparing, because of course, as viewers and yourself would know, that 16 days actually is very close to also us closing and starting to wind down for the year and preparing for Christmas break. So that's when we start preparing our posters, our information, our websites, and just to ensure that survivors understand, or help seekers understand, where to get help if they can't get hold of us while we are on shutdown during Christmas break. And we were testing the line, and we literally got the response as you dial the line. It says the subscriber you have dialed is not available at present. Please try again later. This came as a shock. We've always known, of course, that there's been issues. Publicly, the DSD has reported to Parliament that they have issues with subcontractors and all of that when they changed contractors from Vodacom to, and they decide to diversify or to make it an open tender. However, it had not gotten to the point where we are now getting only a dialing tone. So this concerned us, and we, of course, were concerned that, number one, the department has not made a public service announcement to ensure that the public understand that this number, the 0800 428 428 number, is no longer in service for now, or whatever the process is. There's not been an announcement. We then, further search also showed that we have been we're giving this number. At first it used to ring, but now it's actually just going straight to voicemail. So this concern raised with the department.
According to the Parliamentary Monitoring Group, this was between January of 2023 and December of that same year. The GBV Command Center, the line, it received just over 65,000 calls. Of that, 5,000 survivors were actually assisted. Does that paint a picture of just how important this line is if it can record numbers upwards of 65,000?
Yes. This line is critical to the service. And what we like to emphasize when we're talking about the GBV Command Center, it's more than a call center. It is a way in which first you are able, if you think of the high number, you are able to sift survivors, right? To actually sift the problem and ensure that they're sent to where it's needed. One of the biggest things that we need to also understand, NGOs like Mosaic, yes, we provide urgent and practical services to survivors of GBV, particularly domestic and intimate partner violence. But the limitation is if right now someone calls our line and says, my perpetrator or my partner is about to do something to me, harm me, kill me, do something. We do not have the resource to geolocate them and to send help. We do not have a mandate to compel SAPS, for instance, to deploy a vehicle and go to that location and give them the exact location. Whereas the GBV Command Center, the way it's structured, it actually allows for that. So it's a life-saving tool that we need, that we rely in the referral pathway to ensure that when a survivor help seeks, they're able to actually be sent to appropriate services. We also must understand that the GBV Command Center is national footprint. So many of us are limited to a province, to a town, to cities. We are a national organization, but we're in three provinces. What happens to the others? What happens to those in deep rural communities? These are the things that weakens, the way we are trying to approach the gender-based violence and femicide prevention if we're linking it to the National Strategic Plan on gender-based violence and femicide. So this number is critical. Those numbers are like are probably a drop in our notion, and we will see it in the festive season, how important the GBV command center is. And now that we don't have it, we won't get to see it.
Yeah.
And then it rise in femicide and in reports elsewhere. Yeah.
One of the country's biggest telecoms companies, Vodacom, it is understood that they are, quote unquote, the interim service provider, having been appointed on the 11th of this year, 2024, by the Department of Social Development. Do we know, have you reached out to Vodacom to understand what exactly is the problem?
We have not reached out directly to Vodacom because, of course, our counterpart is the Department of Social Development. But I have unconfirmed engagements with the department in which they confirm that Vodacom definitely has been, they've been given the mandate and permission from Treasury. But the issue is that, and this is where I want to also highlight that we also have a responsibility to, we are not only talking about how DSD as a government entity has dropped the ball, but even also corporates, they dropped the ball. So Vodacom aside, the company whose name we actually don't know if it starts with a B, they've contracted them. They are the one that had taken over the contract. They seem apparently to be holding hostage the system. So government is also now trying to fight them to get the system back, and they're using the courts against the department. To hold the system. And what we need to, this is beyond profits. We need to be responsible with people's lives. And I think when it comes to the same way that we were responsible when it came to COVID, right? Everyone, rich or poor, male or female, whatever gender, race, or you were affected by COVID. So we all hands on deck, and we didn't allow such things to happen. And I think as public, one of the things that, yes, we are demanding from DSD, but we are also saying that the courts have to be responsible in not allowing interdicts to be used to play with the system and hold it hostage in a way that it's not released for us to use the service. So that's quite important, because while we are playing ping pong with each other and making it about profit, lives are being lost. It's poor survivors who cannot afford, in the deep rural, who depend on the service. When they want to help sick, they do not have a police station next to them. They do not have a Tutuzela care center next to them. They do not have a magistrate's court where they can run to apply for protection order. They need the GBV command center in order for services to be deployed to them.
Advocate Tarisai Mchuchu-MacMillan, thank you very much for your time. Executive Director at the organization Mosaic.